Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell-lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to patriotsperspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, please make sure that you do comment below. Tell us where you're holding the line. And also, please tell us what you're most concerned about, because we are having on guests today because we know 100% of what is trending on Twitter. And without further ado, I am bringing on my friend Hector Roos, who has run Roos. I'm sorry, Hector. I always say you Ross. I'm sure that everybody does that to you. So Hector is the chair of the Miami-Dade Libertarian Party, and he has also run for governor of Florida as a Libertarian candidate. So Hector, welcome to Patriots Perspective. This is the first time you've been on. I hope that you'll come on much more. Your insights are invaluable, especially considering when we can have Republican versus Libertarian debates, even though I would love for you to come to the Republican Party because I think you would be great there. You still keep hanging on the Libertarian Party, but that is the swing vote. Man, you guys really helped pull it off President Trump. We appreciate it very much. And, I know that, there's a lot of debate out there right now. So I'm curious to your thoughts and look forward to seeing what you're thinking right now about what all is going on. So you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Christy. I think the important what you just said is really very important for listeners to understand. It's the swing vote that actually matters in these elections, in the big elections, big partisan elections, and less so everybody else as a consequence. So, in other words, I have more influence in the outcome of Republicans getting elected to office than Republicans do. As a result, it's funny how that works, but that is the issue of our political system in America, where we have a one-party system that just switches back between who's really who's the checker in the room, right? So that's the important part, and we see a lot of fighting back and forth between the different camps that are in President Trump's ear, whether it's libertarians or whether it's the Stephen Millers who can't shut up about libertarians and their influence, or others, frankly. So it's interesting. There's the conflict right now or discussions really is basically on international policy. Do we expand this nation building? Do we continue to support internationalism in a way that's not America focused? Or do we keep going and trying to defend the legacy programs of the Biden and Biden times, right? So that's really where it comes. There is a lot of hemming and hawing and pushing and pulling on Trump's ears. Like, please pay attention to me. What's going on? And it affects everything we're doing or talking about at any given time, because the consequences are generational of the decisions that President Trump gets to make. And it's not just Congress is basically feckless. They don't really want to do anything except spend money that they don't have. So that all the real decisions then get left to the executive, which is the person in the White House, which is President Trump. So that's why we're here and why we're talking, because it's so clear that of who is able to make actual decisions for Americans and improve their lives for the better or sometimes for the worse. So that's why we're here, and thank you for having me. And I'm ready to have this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other conversation that has to be had is, Hector, one of the debates that I've tried to go at with libertarians in the past is, how do we convince you guys to come over to our party and to so that we can get your support in the elections that you don't get to vote for. So one of the things that you said early on was that you get to vote for the presidents or the presidents in the general elections, but what you don't get to do is vote in the primary elections, where the vote really sometimes really counts, especially like in Miami-Dade County. We really needed that libertarian vote for maybe the Republican candidate for sheriff, because we now have a sheriff that, yes, President Trump did endorse, Rosie, but it seems to me like we have the same old police department. They don't really understand what their real roles are, and which is very hard whenever you've got a sheriff in office who has never even worked in a sheriff's department before, especially from a libertarian standpoint. So I'm really curious your thoughts on things like that, and also your thoughts on Elon starting yet another party. How is that going to affect even the Libertarian Party? I was surprised that he just didn't come on over to support the Libertarian Party, considering you guys have grown quite a bit in the past few months, especially since the November election, when President Trump did acknowledge that, if it had not been for the Libertarian Party, that he might not be elected to office, and we could have, had another Beijing Biden. He didn't exactly say that, so ladies and gentlemen, don't go out there searching for that comment exactly, but he definitely thanked the libertarians and came to your conference. So talk a little bit about how you think Elon, this new party, has affected, and your views on, even though you guys don't vote in the primary elections, how you think, how libertarians view that if they realize that there's not really a libertarian on the ballot. I mean, personally, I think we should have a libertarian. Libertarians should have their own parties, and that should be the person on the ballot. So I'm curious to what your thoughts are.
Well, the important part is to recognize what the situation is. The uh, You're talking about. I had mentioned earlier that we live in a one-party system. You mentioned that we have primaries that only Republicans can vote for. That's actually that's the case certainly in Florida and in about 10 other states. Everywhere else actually, the process is a little bit more open, or not as the not as severe. Something to realize is that the reason why our electoral system exists is to create some kind of consensus. The consensus is that so people with different views and different goals, they're trying to come together to elect somebody who will ultimately represent everybody, at least in terms of priorities. So we don't get to have that consensus in a closed primary system where that, for example, that Florida has. So again, you're concerned about a candidate getting elected like Sheriff Rosie doesn't necessarily prioritize what everybody really thinks is the most important things, and that means that you Republicans and Democrats, for that matter as well, will prioritize a very small population of voters that are only voting in those primaries. Now, you're saying the solution is to get more people to vote in the primaries. Absolutely, that would definitely be one way of doing it. And I know a lot of libertarians that are open to doing that, and some of them have been very vocal about having to participate in that, and even calling it the challenge to influence the outcome or the legacy of President Trump. Uh, but generally speaking, it's not. I even still serve as that's the short term. Long term, of course, these laws are ridiculous because they don't. They just help entrenched political power players influence public policy in a manner that just enriches themselves and their cronies. Long term, changing the laws, lawsuits, all those things are important. But right now, if we're talking about defending our liberties, we have hard choices to make in regards to influencing these political primaries. And I do not begrudge libertarians for crossing the aisle and changing the voter registration just to vote for people that will make a difference and prioritize people's needs. I think I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I think that's, you'd actually just said a really great point. That people can change their voter registration right before they can change it. I think it's 30 days or 60 days before the election, and vote in the primaries for the party that you feel has a candidate that maybe you otherwise would not get to vote for. Because I'll tell you, Hector, one of the biggest things my neighbors didn't realize is, they were these are actually Democrats, and they were, going, well, I'm not going to be, I can't, I don't see you on my ballot. And I'm like, well, you're not seeing me on your ballot because I'm having to make it through, or maybe I'm only going to be on the ballot for Republicans. And if you're not Republican, you are not going to see me there, sadly. And if I don't make it through that primary, then you are not even going to see me on the general ballot. So you will never even know I ran for office. And so I think that's the biggest myth that a lot of people, misconstrue. And I think it's, very sad. I understand why it's done, because, otherwise we could have, people switching parties, but they can still do it anyway. I mean, so
Sure.
it's something that can happen anyway, but it is very helpful when you do have people that are more engaged in the primaries. I say after the primaries, it's too late, because by the time we get to general election, you've already had a group of people that have chosen before you. And believe it or not, it's a very small group, because very few people go out to vote in the
Right.
primary elections. And those are the people who affect your lives long term. Hector, can you talk a little bit, especially, considering we are talking about Sheriff Rosie as well, and I'm using her as an example because, her position, we haven't had a sheriff here in over 62 years. That should be very impactful. And I'm still seeing her website on the county website, meaning it's controlled by the county still to this day. Whereas you have, Dario Fernandez and, the supervisor of election, I believe, is still on the county website as well. However, Dario Fernandez, our tax collector, has, changed over and immediately changed his website off of the county website, which I very much appreciated. So can you talk a little bit about that, especially for libertarians, and how that could be affected?
Well, so it is an interesting conversation. The first thing I realized, the big news that she did as a sheriff was actually suspend. I don't know if you recall the school bus camera ticketing
Hmm.
program. She just outright canceled it. Like, she just used her authority, said, "We're not going to force it. We're not going to force this. We're not going to allow these programs to continue." And it had really not much authority under her to do that. She just said, "I'm the constitutional officer. I dictate what is public safety policy here in Miami-Dade County," and she did it. And that was it. If anybody's not aware of what this bus, so public school buses entered into a program with a third party vendor to issue basically cameras that would uh, capture people's license plates for people who were not stopping for the little stop sign that comes out when the school buses stop. The problem is it was happening arbitrarily, because the school bus driver could just, oops, I hit the wrong button, and it triggers the camera. Not that they were actually stopping, not that there were actually even kids on the bus, not that they were even in residential neighborhoods. And it was such a huge problem that there was no real way to that the system was to be fair, and so she canceled that. On the other things, it's really a matter of practice. This, whether it's the sheriff, which is an extension of they even kept their uniform colors. I don't know if you realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but since these were departments within Miami-Dade County that are transitioning out to be in these independent agencies, that it becomes a task of, well, when do we cut that umbilical cord, frankly, and the county still has to actually approve a budget, the budget for these constitutional offices as well. So there is still this linkage, and it obviously was going to take some time. I would say something I have to do is actually make an appointment with her to go over the list of things that she still can do, and one of those is definitely clear that distinction between the county and the sheriff's agencies. There is a lot still happening in Miami-Dade County where sheriffs can step in, as a matter of just public safety issues, because the policies that were set up under the previous under the previous setup. For instance, municipalities in Miami-Dade County. This is going to sound really policy wonky. So we have 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade County, and about half of them relied on the county police department as their police department. So how does that resolve when you don't actually have a uniform set of laws though that they're trying to enforce? Like each county actually has different things that they want enforced. Everything from uh, uh, from speed standards, like just traffic speeds, to whether they're license plate reader programs, to those kind of surveillance, public safety through surveillance techniques, right? But there should be one standard across the entire county now. So that's a good example of where, well, what's our are we going we're going to have a constitutional sheriff that's in charge now of public safety throughout the entire county. There should be a standard for how to approach public safety from a law enforcement perspective. Uh, and then there's the interaction between the federal government, and our local counties, where we have obligations that are created by the state of Florida legislature, asking where the state legislatures asked for the sheriff's agencies to de-emphasize public safety and go off and into other missions like immigration enforcement, or traffic control, or things of this nature, right? Or even like Miami is a big tourist destination, right? So let's prioritize World Cup soccer and put officers deploying there, and these are just massive de-emphasizing the actual core mission of public safety, which is first of all deterrence, and taking them off where they're needed and putting them into places where really it's a subsidy to some private a private profit making enterprise that we don't benefit in otherwise, directly at least. So that's really where it comes down to. It is we have it's the system we have, like the highest law enforcement person we have in government is still President Trump. So we still have to actually talk it over and figure out where do we have agreement, and where can we help them achieve those priorities, because these are all everyone's elected to a fixed amount of time to be in office. So that's
Yeah.
our obligation ultimately.
Yeah, and I think that it's a great idea too, because I think a lot of people don't know how our Constitution actually works. That our sheriff is actually our highest law enforcement officer in our county. So that means over the attorney general. So I would have liked to seen her immediately pull in the corruption unit, in underneath her belt, because obviously Catherine Fernandez Rundle, who's a Democrat, had it under her department for quite some time. I feel like that should have immediately been pulled over, out from underneath the state attorney general's office, so that our sheriff's office could work directly with the federal Bureau of Investigation, so we could try to get some of the corruption cleaned up here. And so, that's one of the things that I've spoken with Rosie about, and I'm hoping that she is considering that, because that's something that candidate Ruben De La Rua, who was the only candidate out of the 17 that had actually worked in a sheriff's office. He has worked, with multiple sheriffs, in the state of Florida, and run a bunch of different programs underneath the various sheriffs. That was one of the things that he brought forth that I really, really liked, was that, in order to clean up the county as a whole, we really need to pull that corruption unit out from underneath the state prosecutor's office, and it should go directly under the sheriff, so that the sheriff can then investigate, and then the state prosecutors can look at it from their point of view, and then to determine whether it can be prosecuted, so that the state prosecutors not only determine if it can be prosecuted, but they are now still going, like that. It's something I've got to call today, because there are election issues that we're still finding, where maybe candidates didn't live where that they said that they lived on their voter registration, or on their candidacy papers. Who's to follow up with that? And are those people getting paid off? There should be a different department within that, because these are potentially influential people. And if our own sheriff's department cannot locate them at the address where they claim to live, then that is a huge problem. So that is something that that I'm finding that the sheriff is going, well, we don't really know what this department's doing. It's like, okay, So
Right.
you're telling me to go here, but yet you don't have any clue what they're doing and you don't have any clue to their records. So basically right now need to report in both departments or all three departments or maybe five departments. Whereas if they were working simultaneously and actually operating by the law, um, that could benefit all of us. So that also brings me to the question, Hector, because I know, the Libertarian Party is not very big fans of, any kind of cryptocurrency. Cash is king, which I agree with. And correct me if I'm wrong. I just know that, when I've come to some of your meetings and things like that, that people, cash is king, and I agree with it. 100%. And no taxation without representation. That is right in our constitution. A lot of times we don't really have representation, and we might think that we do. We might think that we have to do certain things. So can you talk a little bit about the libertarian beliefs on things such as the taxation without representation?
Sure. Just one last thing about Sheriff Rosie. It is everything that you just said can be summed up in there was so many outlays of personnel. She is at the end of the day the head of an agency that has 1,000 uniformed officers, and all of them have been loaned to this, like you said, the state prosecutor in the county or to some other agency, and it takes a lot, not only a while to figure out how to redeploy them because they're part of agreements, but then to figure out what they were doing and what anybody else was doing during this entire time. So nobody, who's on what base, right?
Yeah.
That's something to definitely approach her about, and certainly the different specialized units, even whether it's gang task force, drug interdiction, or human trafficking, huge issues there because we certainly have that problem in any major metro area. That Miami-Dade County is the fourth largest metro area in the country. But okay. So now on the other issue that you just described. So libertarians agree, we have a very at our core the message that we should be free to do. We should be free to do what is in our hearts to do without the interference of a third party like government, as long as we're not hurting anybody. That means government inherently controls all our activities based on even our futures based on the control of monetary policy. The fact that we have to buy everything in U.S. dollars, but we're not allowed to actually keep U.S. dollars in a manner that would protect it from inflation or from government decisions that would confiscate wealth from us. So there's no real way to escape taxes unless we're using something that's not in U.S. dollars. So that's why we want cash is easy, portable, not reportable. It's key to strategies of tax avoidance. So we can maximize the value of our earnings. Frankly, cryptocurrency adds to that. So in general, libertarians are supportive of cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, where there's just enough of it that people are using that can be used as an alternative to U.S. dollars. There's nothing patriotic about using U.S. dollars. Frankly, the way we have money today is that it is actually controlled by a private banking cartel that determines how much it's worth the dollars in our pocket are worth at any given time. That's horrible. Because then they can use the state to confiscate our wealth at any given time when it suits them, or politicians can do the same in order to pay for things that they don't have enough tax revenue to support. And that was the concerns regarding deficit spending that we're hearing from the federal government. So when it comes down to cryptocurrency, the idea is at least can we have a different store of wealth that's not controlled by the banks or not controlled by the government, so that we can build wealth on, because ultimately if we can have deregulated money, in other words, then we can achieve the goal of wealth creation in a much more efficient manner. Uh, I mean, that's at the end of the day, government cannot spend money that it doesn't take on someone that it doesn't take from someone else first.
Mhm.
So that's the core idea that libertarians have been communicating for 54 years, and that's what we continue to preach today. That it's really at the end of the day, it is about what government has done to our money and what we can do to stop it. The last thing I'd say about this is that when we started this conversation about voting in primaries, but the biggest issue is that we don't really have a free system of choice in the marketplace of ideas. That's why a lot of people are forced into to voting in primaries. But the most key part of people, half of all voting age Americans, that is adults in America, aren't even registered to vote, but they do vote anyway. They vote with their wallets. They
Mhm.
decide, I'm going to live in this state, California, and I'm going to come to the free state, or and they're going to make those kind of decisions that best suit themselves and their families. And the ability to have an independent store of wealth in a cryptocurrency that's immune from, or at least resistant to, government or banking confiscation, is the goal. So that's why a lot of libertarians support it. But there are not all cryptocurrencies the same. There are some that are sponsored by government or banks, that really don't help. They just make it easier to buy things. Like you make it even easier, or than like using a credit card, right? So it's you have to be very wary that not all cryptocurrencies are the same.
So that kind of goes back to Elon a little bit, in terms of, because Elon, a lot of people didn't realize in the very beginning, even before Doge came out, about the time that Elon was in conversation about buying X. He was actually in conversation too with Jack Dorsey regarding Doge. I picked up on a conversation. It was a public conversation. They were out in the open during COVID, and I bought Doge because they were having this conversation about Doge, and Doge was extremely cheap then. Like I say, I didn't put enough in, but they were having the conversation about it, so I thought, well, it definitely can't hurt. If they're both talking about it, and if they're both talking about, oh yeah, how much are they going to invest, yada yada yada. Um, so now we have Elon talking about this new party, the America Party. So I don't think we clarified how do you think Elon should have handled this whole America Party? Should it happen? Should it not? Do you think it's time for it? How will it affect our elections moving forward?
I think he's trying to do the same thing that libertarians have been doing with President Trump, which is, I'm going to create a new camp in order to establish my value and negotiate for influence over the decisions of President Trump and the administration. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if he was really serious about electoral politics, he would pick the vehicle that's already established ballot access in the country, which is the Libertarian Party. I don't think that's. I think that's pretty clear. That then, as a result, that he's just trying to build out this, um, uh, just a pocket of influence as a result, not the electoral side of it.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit what you mean by, because I think that our audience definitely is not going to understand, and I know that you're very well versed on the ballot access, the primary access. In other words, why libertarians don't have a primary and general election. Why don't they have the bigger voice, and what would it take to get that? Because whatever you guys have already built is what Elon is going to have to build, and how is that going to affect, and what are the terms? How long does it take to get there?
All right, this could be a 2-hour conversation. I'll say it in 2 minutes.
Okay.
The it take so in order to be established under federal law, to be recognized as a political campaign, you actually have to at least run campaigns for one election cycle. So you're already stuck at least for 2 years, having waiting for recognition from the federal government. But even then, it's every state has a different access to creating a political party. So just because Elon Musk said, I created the America Party, he's just created an organization that doesn't have any recognition in a single state to run candidates in. So you have to go through each state has their own process to do that. And the Libertarian Party has decades of experience going through all that paperwork and establishing networks of supporters and running candidates to establish that legal recognition. In Florida is actually the easiest state in the country to form a new political party. You just submit some paperwork and you're done. Uh, Nothing else is like that. Now, for the Libertarian Party to grow, it would need to compete against the two parties that Florida used to have three political parties all the way through the 60s, which were the Democrat Party, obviously the Republican Party, and the Whig Party. And that which ended up being gobbled up by the Republican Party. Whig, WHIG, not
I was going to say,
WIG.
I've never
Yeah,
even heard of that.
yeah. So it used to be, yeah. It was a party that existed, had president that had been elected as a Whig back in the 1800s. So it's not like there, but generally speaking, at some point, the law had changed. Literally, Democrats mostly, in the South, decided that they're going to during as a part of the progressive era reforms. You remember those commies?
Yeah.
Basically said we are going to we're going to write protectionist laws to guarantee the Democratic Party will never go away into the laws, and that's why we still have they're so influential even today. And as a result, even where now the Republican Party is in ascendancy, that still doesn't change the fact that now that it achieves that goal by basically forcing everybody to vote in these primaries in order to have an influence on the outcome of the general election. So to put it to you this way, the last thing I'll say on it is that there has never been a candidate in Florida, at least, that has been elected in a general election that was not a Democrat or Republican.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
so in other words, the one person, and predominantly the winner in a primary is being the winner 100% of the time. In other words, so that's because people are convinced you have to vote in the primary to have an influence over the outcome, and history has shown that's the case. So we have a system that's not fair to voters, and it's certainly not fair to anybody who wants to see change or has been affected negatively by the policies. So even if you hate the outcome, you hate the politicians, but you love your country, you have to make hard decisions about which way you're going to do it. So you are going to either influence the process from the outside as a libertarian, for instance, or you are going to be inserted into the internal process in the primary system, and that's how we got to where we are.
Yep. Well, thank you for explaining that, Hector. I knew that there was no better person to ask, and you're a wealth of information, and your entire libertarian group is probably some of the most well versed on the U.S. Constitution in the entire county. So I appreciate that, and I always appreciate your advice and your just your insights, and what you guys see, and the research and the studies and the historical aspect. Because if we all learn how we got here, we can learn how to fix it. That's what I say.
Exactly.
So, and especially for speaking to each other. So I am very grateful to have you on, and very grateful to have you in the know, and here in Miami-Dade County. And let me know if you want to go talk to Rosie. I'm happy to join you, as a member of the Republican Party. I know of a couple Democrats that may want to come along with us. That, maybe if she can hear us all at the same time, that would also be beneficial as well. So that we can, kind of help her get to the bottom of some of the things that we would all like to jointly see, so that it's not a political move, it's more of a citizenry move. Because
No, all politicians want to feel supported
Yep.
by the proposals they want to push, and at the end of the day, we want to help them
Yeah.
pass good policy. So if you want us to show up to your public meeting, and
Yep.
just reach out to us, and we will sit there, we'll speak up and say this is a good policy, this will help people, and you should support this initiative.
Yep. And I would like to see everybody speaking up, especially our libertarians right now, regarding the city of Miami elections, where we've had politicians try to revoke votes for the people on city ballots that should definitely be on there, giving themselves extra years, which actually violate term limits. I do not agree with that at all, and think that we should all be speaking out about that as well. So, Hector, I hope that you guys will, show up to even Thursday's meeting, and that's this Thursday, even though it's supposedly already passed. DeSantis, I believe, will be pulling back on this with our attorney general, because I believe they were trying to leave the mayor room and time to, overturn the decision from the
He can
commissioner.
veto. You're
And
right.
he
He
didn't
can.
veto. And I don't think he's going to veto, because I think he is also direct friends with Damian Pardo and Ralph Risotto, who was just elected to office. It's like, conveniently he was elected, all while they were knocking out another candidate that supposedly, whether he lived here or not, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's very hard to believe that, people would try to run for office in a place that they don't live, but welcome to Miami-Dade County, Florida. And the reason we have BananaRepublicNews.com as well, and write on Banana Republic News the things that ought not be. I try to separate the two, because it's like two different things. This is about our country, whereas the Banana Republic News are just the news that just absolutely shouldn't be, to help people people connect the dots with the people that are in power, that are constantly trying to just alter our reality. And, we all want to live peacefully. We want to live free. We want to have our garbage picked up. We want to have our sidewalks cleaned. We want our tax dollars to actually go. We want to see them at work. And we don't really often see them here. That's just my take. Hector, you may feel completely differently.
We all want a government that does. We all want a government that is small enough that we don't have to worry about on a daily basis.
Exactly. Thank you, Hector. Any other words for the audience?
Ultimately, if people want to cheat and they find value in cheating the American people in their elections, and they find value in that, they're going to try. So we always have to be vigilant about this. It's regardless of what the law says. Not all laws are just, and that's why we can change them, and we should always try to. Yep. So talking is the first step, and thank you for inviting me here to talk.
Yeah,
that is the first step.
Talking is the first step. That is absolutely correct. And if there's anybody else that you think that I should be talking to, let me know. I'm glad to listen to anyone, no matter which side that they're on. And sometimes we try to debate and convince them otherwise. Like, I would love to convince you to come to the Republican Party because I would love to have you. But there's no better thing than for me to say to you, I would love to have you as part of the Republican Party. I think it's an honor when somebody, when you guys invited me to speak at the Libertarian Party, I was grateful for the opportunity to listen and hear and learn and connect with a lot of the libertarians. It's great. And I recommend that people come to the events. And come to your meetings. Are you still hosting your meetings on?
Yeah, the second Tuesday of every month. So there's one tonight at Duffy's Tavern on 57th Avenue, Red Road.
Okay, and I recommend that. The food is also great there too. The staff is great, the food is great, and they're a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Hector, and every audience. Be sure to follow Hector Roos. It's not Ross, it's ROOS for Florida. And we need to support Hector because and make sure that you follow him. He's obviously very knowledgeable, and who knows, he could be the first libertarian for something that. And I appreciate you constantly trying, Hector, because that's shows your diligence to move America forward for sure. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.